Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura George, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oracle Institute. And I do have a PowerPoint, so I think this is going to be fun for everybody. I'm going to share screen. So the Peace Pentagon is located in southwestern Virginia in a little town called Independence. And that is the new river behind the building there. That happens to be a completely misnamed river. It's the oldest river in America. It's the oldest river in the Western Hemisphere. And some geologists think it's the oldest river in the world because the Appalachian Mountain Range is the oldest. So we're in an exceedingly beautiful, tranquil spot, and it's known as the Virginia Highlands because it looks like Scotland and it was settled by the Scotch Irish. So it's a beautiful place. If you haven't been here before, I'm going to invite you to check it out. So what do? Well, we fancy ourselves a think tank, which is why I was excited by this invitation from the College of Complexes. As I said, we're a charity, and our focus is building a new world based on social justice, interfaith unity, and a culture of peace. We study the nexus between religion, politics, civil rights, and human evolution, basically all the forbidden topics. We love to talk about it. And our formal mission statement is the Virginia Act for Religious Freedom, which was drafted by Thomas Jefferson. And it's one of the three things he was the most proud of. It's on his tombstone, along with being president and starting the University of Virginia. Our focus is also on protecting and defending the founding principles of the United States. We are left-leaning, and we host progressive programs that anchor progressive values. We also have a very spiritual focus, and we believe that at long last, science and spirituality are finally merging into a new holistic system state, which is replacing reductionism, materialism. And we also believe that we are undergoing a huge paradigm shift, the kind that only comes around a couple thousand years. We call this new era the fifth spiritual paradigm, and we're going to talk about that. We also believe that paradigms shift when the Godhead shifts. It's that is actually the main precipitating feature of a paradigm shift. And so we operate a spirituality school. We've got a publishing house and a peace practice, and all of the programs focus on conscious evolution. So let me talk about the spiritual paradigms. This is how we group human history. So we could debate whether this first paradigm existed. I think most of us would say that sun was there before the Big Bang, whether you're religious or not. So we call this the first paradigm, a period where if you are a spiritual person, you can think of this as primordial oneness before separation. But the first paradigm that humans actually conceived on their own is actually the second paradigm. And this was the longest lived. Our early ancestors believed that God was female. It made sense from their limited knowledge of how babies are made and reproduction of our species. So this is known as the era of the Great Mother. Eventually, though, the Great River Valley civilizations were anchored, and we start seeing a split in male-female roles. Before, everyone was hunting, gathering, and then we moved into what we think of today as the beginning of civilization. That was the time that the Godhead splintered into gods and goddesses, and this epoch lasted about 5,000 years. Only one religion of this era survived to this day, and that's Hinduism. And there's some interesting reasons why Hinduism survived, because all of these other pantheons are in our history books and our mythological books, starting with the Sumerian and Babylonian and moving through to the Egyptian, Greek, Roman pantheons. We don't believe in those anymore. We think of those as thought forms created by our ancestors. Then we went into the fourth spiritual paradigm, and this is where we've been for about 2,000 years. It's as though, unfortunately, humans were returning to monotheism and the truth of this one creator, this one God, this one source of all being, but they weren't sophisticated yet enough to envision a genderful or a genderless deity. And we have been stuck in what I lovingly call daddy deism for the last 2,000 years. So what is happening now is that we are entering this new paradigm. We think it's going to be an integrated Godhead that's sort of trickling down. This is part of our trickle down deity theory, that basically your belief in the Godhead impacts your everyday view of the world, your everyday activities, and how you interpret the world. So we think the key to the shift, again, has to do with gender. And I've got two models here that I fancy. The one on the left is the Hermetic path. It's very ancient, but if you notice, the very first law there is the law of gender. And these are nested laws of the universe. These are nested sorts of powers and abilities. And many people love to focus on, you know, cause and effect, karma, and these other higher level laws. But the truth is, planet Earth hasn't even nailed the law of gender based on how we treat women and based on how we treat it. Also impacts racial diversity treatment and things like that. So this is one of the models that I think is worthwhile. And even for those who aren't enamored with spirituality can grasp that, boy, we got a problem right at the get-go, law of gender. The one on the right is the Kabbalah. It's the tree of life. And if you notice, inherent in this teaching is a feminine and a masculine pillar. So that is why these are two paths that I feel are valid. I like to promote them for those who are interested in pursuing spiritual learning, because this is where we're headed. There's somebody not muted. I'm just going to mention that. We also have a church called Oracle Temple. And I chose this quote from the Gospel of Thomas. It was one of the banned Gospels that the Catholic Church didn't want you to see. Scholars call it the saying source because it's probably the oldest treatise we have with the actual quotes of this avatar. And if you note, he's saying when you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, the upper like the lower, and when you make the male and female into a single one so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, then you enter the kingdom. So this mysterious quote packs a lot of energy if you do study the law of gender. So at our church, again, we believe we're entering this fifth paradigm. And what's different here is that people are now describing God as energy, unity, peace, consciousness, truth. That was what Gandhi said. Gandhi said God was truth, love, and light. We don't worship the masculine, the feminine, and the old-timey third paradigm way. Rather, we have a second-tier expression of this. It's an understanding of Hieros Gamos, which is the sacred union. And also we understand the need for gender equity and female bodily autonomy, which didn't exist during the third paradigm. We also endorse nature mysticism. This is what most young people are into now. I'll explain what second tier means in a minute. That is a second tier expression of old-fashioned paganism. And kids now want to kayak down this new river and bliss out on Mother Nature. And at Oracle, we see this as above, so below sort of rhythm, law of rhythm and correspondence in Hermeticism. And lastly, we do encourage everyone to practice mindfulness. Good thoughts, good words equal good karma. Just wanted to mention again about the publishing house. These are some of our titles. We've won 5 book awards. We don't publish many books, but when we do, we select them for their incredible content, which we think is life-changing and paradigm-shifting. We also have an intentional community going. It's called the Valley of Light. I don't know if you've heard the term City of Light, but this is a belief that we have to get these futuristic cities manifesting and modeling how humans should be living in the 21st century. We have 23 acres in the Blue Ridge Mountains, again, along this amazingly ancient river. Our infrastructure is in place. We're building the Peace Pentagon Conference Center. That's what we're completing right now. We also have a campground, 7 homes. And if you don't know who that woman is in that photograph there, that is Barbara Marx Hubbard. She's probably the most famous futurist on the planet. She is now passed, but she very much enjoyed coming here to see the Peace Pentagon, and I'll explain why in a minute. So her famous quote was, "We need a peace room as sophisticated as a war room." And that is what we are building here. The Peace Pentagon is dedicated, again, at a think tank level, to cracking the code of the shift I also love to point out that Virginia has 2 Pentagons now and ask people, which one are you supporting? The building itself is ultra green. It's a German passive house construction that's become sort of a generic term like Kleenex, but it's actually a registered design methodology that exceeds the highest green standard in America, which is LEED. And it looks finished from the outside. It's not finished on the inside. So if anyone's listening and has some extra pocket change, I got a place for you to donate. Help us finish the Pentagon. I also want to talk a minute about sacred sites and sacred geometry. This will help explain why we chose the Pentagon as the shape of our building. So one reason right off the bat is because we believe in these 5 paradigms, and we want to give energy to this 5th one that is now manifesting, this 5th one that is basically a breech birth at the moment. So that's its main dedication, its main focus. But there's also sacred geometry involved. And I learned later that the sacred geometry that we chose for the Peace Pentagon matches the Washington Monument. So our sacred numbers here are 5 and 11. And our Pentagon is 55 feet long, its exterior walls. Turns out that's what the base of the Washington Monument is. The Washington Monument also is 555 feet tall. So we got some kismet with the founding fathers, I think. The pentacle also contains the golden ratio, which is an amazing mathematical number that was discovered by Pythagoras. It's involved with the Fibonacci sequence. It's also an infinite number like pi. Fractals are based on the pentagram, the pentacle, and as is the torus. So that's a Mandelbrot to the right, a Harris spiral, and you'll see it's based on 5s. There's also a lot of mysteries about Virginia, and I don't have time to go into all of them tonight. I'm just going to give you a little teaser, but that is Athena on our flag. Our flag was designed by Francis Bacon, who was the High Chancellor to the supposed Virgin Queen Elizabeth, but in reality, she had at least 2 sons. Bacon was the elder. And there are many books written on this. This is more legend. It's pretty much real history that she was indisposed for a while when she was having kids. So anyway, Bacon had a lot of privileges as her illegitimate son. He should have been King of England, by the way, after she died, but James I got the crown. Anyway, he designed the flag, and he became very obsessed with the legends of the Knights Templar. He wanted to know, what did they find at the Temple Mound? Why the massacre on Friday the 13th? And this is now legend, which is he did become so enamored of these legends that he wrote a book called The New Atlantis. Many people think this book was written about Virginia because he named Virginia after his mother, and then he sent a vault over here. The legend is that he found what the Templars hid in Scotland, as the legend goes, and decided they'd be safer here. There's a book called Secret Destiny of America, written by Manly Hall. I encourage everyone to read it. I draw the bullseye even tighter, though, than the Secret Destiny of America to the Secret Destiny of Virginia. The founding fathers were meeting here. They were plotting the Revolutionary War here, and they were probably the last ones to see this vault if it existed. That weird shaped fort on the left is Fort Washington. Washington built a pentagonal fort in New York, which was destroyed, but you can look it up on Wikipedia. And then the other book I have there is Return of the Revolutionaries. There's a group of elderly men, all men, footnote that, who think they're the reincarnated founding fathers. That's how I learned of these legends. It's a fun book. And on the right there, I think that's stone, which we had in our possession for a while, also known as Jacob's stone, Genesis 28. So another thing we do are these Building the New World summits. I just wanted to mention it. We've been involved. We did not put on the first one in 2008, but I attended and I was like, yes, we need to be doing these futuristic seminars. So they're actually summits. So we were involved in 2015. We did another one in 2020, and look for the next Building the New World conference coming from the Oracle Institute in the near future. Okay, let's dig in. So this is called the spectrum of consciousness. And I don't have time to go into this model in detail, but here you're going to see that first, second tier reference I've been making. Basically, when Maslow was charting human progressions through sustenance level needs and then actualization needs, he didn't deal with that top part of the pyramid, the self-actualization piece. Well, now scholars, and by the way, I took this in college in the 1980s, scholars are refining how people progress because most of us have our sustenance level needs met. So these are stages we all pass through. And if you notice, they're I, we. Some of them are more personal focused. Some of them are more group focused. For those of you who studied Marx, religion being the opiate of the masses, that would be a stage 4 human, and damn was he right. So here I've turned this research into a pyramid. Most people are familiar with it this way because of Maslow. Maslow stopped at stage 6, basically. The realm of the new human, as we define new humans at the Oracle Institute, are people who have reached this stage of consciousness or higher. At stage 6, you are just innately pluralistic. You're not just tolerating others. You kind of think diversity is cool. You also love studying other religions, and you're fascinated by other people's views, and you are someone who has gone world-centric. This is the right human. This is the cutting edge of consciousness. This quote on the right is by Claire Graves. He is the scientist who, or actually the psychologist who took Maslow's theory to the next level. And now giants have stood on his shoulders. But I love this quote because he's describing what it means to go second tier. And he says, "What I find explains best to me the reason that people in stage 7 behave so much better, quantitatively and qualitatively, is this. They are simply not afraid. They are not afraid of finding food. That's a concern at stage 1. They're not afraid that they're not going to have shelter, a concern at stage 2. They're not afraid of predatory man. Yeah, that red meme, watch out for stage 3 humans. That's where Putin is. They're not afraid of God, stage 4. That's where the fundamentalist meme is kind of stuck, fearing God. They're not afraid of not having status or not making it in this world. That's stage 5. That's the materialistic meme that was the American set point for a long time and still is, though we've winnowed out the middle class. And they are not afraid of social rejection, which is stage 6. You've got a human being who isn't afraid. So we've got these new humans coming online, and the millennials and every generation after them get to stage 6 super fast. But what we've got now is a God gap, and this is what the culture wars are about. Again, we believe that when the Godhead shifts, so does the paradigm. So the green stage 6 and up don't believe in God in the old-timey Orthodox way. They are seeing God in a totally different way. And so we're in the middle of this great cusp. We are in between. We're in limbo. We're in between the last paradigm, the 4th paradigm of God the Father, and this new paradigm that I think is going to produce us a balanced and integrated Godhead. This is a very dangerous moment. This is the moment the Roman Empire collapsed. So we haven't been here in over 2,000 years. Ken Wilber is known as the Einstein of consciousness. I've got a quote of his to the left. He says, right now, humanity is in a desperate race between the 70% that remain at ethnocentric or lower levels and the 30% or more at world-centric and higher levels. I seriously give this race a 50-50 chance of coming out in our favor. And here's a quote of mine from my latest book. A great chasm exists between those wedded to the past and those yearning for more mature belief systems, a schism we call the God gap. We live on a dual and polarized planet alongside souls who inhabit a vast array of consciousness, everything from barbarians to Buddhas. So it's the old humans primarily who are fueling the culture war. We've got the attacks on democracy. This is an ugly fascist timeline that is in play. You know, the oppression of voting rights, the gerrymandering, the school shootings, no gun control, racism rearing its ugly head yet again, racial intolerance, fear-mongering about immigrants. The white nationalist movement is to be feared. It is real, it is growing, and we ignore it at our peril. And then don't even get me started on what's happening at the schools and with book banning and all of that. Then the attacks on women. This is the Handmaid's Tale timeline. Good God. We've got the reversal of Roe v. Wade, a 50-year regression in women's rights. We've got abortion bans in half the states. We've got reproductive health care restrictions everywhere. This is the big fight with Tommy Tuberville not allowing us to have military appointees, heads of our military, because they're fighting over whether women in the military should have abortions. We still have this refusal to pass the ERA, even though Virginia again, we were the 38th state to pass it, and it's hung up on technicalities. And then we've got growing female and child trafficking globally. And then here's the anti-woke timeline. So we've got this LGBTQ phobia. We've got gender fluidity is trending. You know, I write here, how many pronouns are we up to now? That's why I jokingly have we, us, and ours on my Zoom screen. Transgenderism is another growing phenomenon. Is it people experimenting with their masculine and feminine energies, which are inherent in each one of us? Is it gender dysmorphia, or is it genetically based? I think the research is still out on this. And then we've got damaging social media, which is even more horrendous for our young girls. At the Peace Pentagon, we have a campaign called Women of Faith and Fury, because we are women of faith and we're pissed off. So we're part of the Virginia Abortion Network. This is because our campus is surrounded, Virginia's still blue, in case you don't know. We still have a legal abortion here, but we're surrounded by Appalachian states where you can't get an abortion any longer. Or you got 6 weeks to find out you're pregnant and get it done. We're also very active in the Virginia Pro-Choice Coalition. In our little town of Independence, we're fighting a, quote, unborn sanctuary ordinance that was brought to us courtesy of the Federalist Society and Texas Right to Life. They chose to cross the Mississippi River and pick on our little town, and we're fighting back here. But 90% of the population in my town is Republican, so I may end up having to sue the county. Again, it'll be the third time I've sued the county if I have to do it. We're also part of an interfaith alliance because it's important to remember that Roe was decided on privacy grounds. That was the 14th Amendment. Ministers like me and others, legal scholars, are starting to realize, what about the First Amendment? Because it seems like one religion, i.e. Christianity, and not even, run-of-the-mill Christians, we're talking evangelical Christians, their belief system is now dictating our reproductive health. So I think there's a real powerful First Amendment argument to be made, despite the scary complexion of the current Supreme Court. So if you're a minister or you're part of a progressive church or a pagan church, please contact me, reach out if you're interested in joining this coalition. Also, this applies to atheists. Atheists don't believe, in an lasting soul. And that is actually a religious belief. That is what you believe, and that's protected. So this notion that the soul, fetuses are ensouled at conception or against conception, that again is an evangelical Christian view and not permitted under our Constitution. We also have an abortion fund, and we got some cool t-shirts on our website. Another thing that Barbara said, in addition to someone has to build a peace room as sophisticated as War Room, she used to talk about Camp Eve. And we all know about Camp David. That's where heads of state meet behind closed doors and drink their brandy and smoke their cigars and try to solve old world problems. Well, Barbara said that there'd be this place called Camp Eve, and it would be where heads of sectors meet and realize the interconnection between all these different aspects of civilized society. And this is where they would brainstorm and strategize on how to build the new world. So we like to think of our campus as Camp Eve. And when the Pentagon is open, we will be holding, again, summits at that caliber. And we invite you to come, even before the Pentagon's completed. We also do a lot of peace work. Some of our peace partners include the Peace Alliance, Earthwise Center, Earth Constitution Institute, By the way, those two are in the Earth Federation movement. So we're very active in the Earth Federation movement. We're also the U.S. headquarters for the Earth Federation movement. And I'm going to be doing a talk next weekend on that with for the Earth Constitution, which is an actual constitution. We also partner with United Religions Initiative, World Beyond War, and other groups. I just wanted to give you a flavor. That last group mentioned there is the Federation of Damanhur. If you don't know about Damanhur, it's the only community I know of that is living in the future, and it's worth checking out. It is amazing what they have accomplished at Damanhur. They operate in every sector, just like a small town would. So they have a daily newspaper, they have schools for their kids, they've got a constitution. I mean, anything you can think of the town, city would have is at Damanhur, and they're modeling and experimenting. And that's what a city of light is. Damanhur is known as a city of light. We're also establishing a Peace on Earth zone here at our campus. Peace on Earth zones are endorsed by the Peace on Earth, actually Empowerment Institute, and the Peace on Earth by 2030 programs. I've got a link there to their website because I'm taking the training right now, and I highly encourage anyone listening to take this training. It's just wonderful. And they're getting astronomical results, exponential results of people who've had the training, then go out into their own community and use this training to evolve peace and common ground and the level of tolerance and acceptance we're going to need if we want to avoid a bloodbath in a type of ugly shift that is right now a potentiality. And I just wanted to mention that's our Peace Pole Medicine Wheel. And this site has been blessed by many indigenous people, the Lakota, the Cherokee. We had the Otomi Toltec from Mexico here, and even the Kogi people of Colombia, who were, I think, actually they weren't discovered, so I can't say last discovered. They came off Sacred Mountain themselves. They might be the last second paradigm people on the planet. They'd never heard of Jesus, never heard of Buddha. They ran up their sacred mountain in the 1500s when the Spanish came, and they've been up there for 500 years and decided to come down when they noticed the earth changes. So again, this is just a summary of all the things we got going on at the Oracle Institute, our brands. So that's the Oracle Institute, the Community Valley of Light, Pentagon, the Building New World Conference, our church. And yeah, we're trying to manifest a new world. Please come and visit us because we've got the place, the people, and the purpose. And lastly, I just want to mention our Oracle Foundational Trilogy, The Truth, the Love, and the Light. It's an award-winning trilogy. And if you're interested in mapping whether you're a second-tier human, check out the last book and be honest with yourself when you self-chart. So good to see you. I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to hope everybody enjoyed that.
Okay, it's time for questions now. Who's got questions? I'd like you to step on up to the front, or if you're online, go ahead and ask. Just raise your hands. Well, any questions? Okay. All right, Douglas. Okay, we got quite a few already. All right, I'm going to give. All right, Margaret, why don't you go first?
Okay, just a quick question. I'm in Dallas, Texas. Texas is a very repressive state, as you know. I hold dual memberships in the Catholic Church and First Unitarian of Dallas, and am most interested in social justice. Do you have any group? I mean, I'm involved in Pax Christi, etc., but I'm fascinated by the Oracle Temple. Do you have any group of, quotes, worshipers, close quotes, in the Dallas area who subscribe to your theological?
No, we do not. We've actually taken our church to Zoom before during COVID. We like to meet in person, but no, we don't have any chapters of the church. The UUs, I think I heard you say you're a Unitarian. The UUs basically follow a humanitarian, progressive view of deity. So they can be a little dry, though, if you're still missing some of the fun. By the way, I checked out of Catholicism by age, I think, 7. the day the priest came to first grade and said, "Who wants to be an altar boy?" And I raised my hand. He was like, "Boy" being the operative word, Laura. So I left that church really early on. I saw the misogyny immediately. I have friends around the country. I could see if there's something closer to you, but there are so many groups online now who are talking about this new Godhead.
And you use at least First Unitarian's very unique. It's one of the largest in the country and probably one of the most affluent. I was just there for some meetings today. It's a very loving group. And you'll be amazed at how many, of course, a lot of people today, Laura, ultra conservative, white Catholics, usually of Republican ilk, would like to excommunicate the Pope, the president.
Right. Yeah,
Okay,
Francis is stepping out a little bit. Again, not enough for me. I mean, I have grown weary of the all boys club at the Vatican. I mean,
Okay,
we'll know the shift has taken place when women can become free. That's when we'll know the shift is officially real.
okay, Luke, you're next, and then we'll go to
Yeah,
Janice.
thank
and then
you,
we'll go to,
thank you, Laura, for your presentation. I have just a few basic questions. Is your group organized as a religion?
No, it's not. I mean, it's a church. It's a IRS, state sanctioned church because it is, in that sense, real, but it's not, there's no dogma. Our dogma is basically pursue truth. We think love is a verb, share love for the benefit of all and follow the light. Follow where your intuition is taking you. I want to emphasize, though, that we are not New Age. That's why I had a couple paths that I think are valid at the beginning of the talk. This New Age, just sort of silliness, is only engendering a sort of spiritual narcissism. And I'm a member of the evolutionary leaders. I want to say this. The evolutionary leaders have realized, boy, did they screw up. Because they gave people permission from the 1980s forward to just focus on themselves and buy crystals and divination cards and spiritually masturbate in the bathtub, instead of creating the army of activists that we need. So it is, there's a term going, or there's a phrase going around in the circles that I'm in, that New Age is dead. We're moving beyond New Age. We're moving into something that is more theosophical, more anchored in reality. And that has to do with the merger of science and spirituality. Quantum physics and what the mystics were talking about is starting to mate up. Like David Bohm was friends with the Dalai Lama, and they were comparing, what are the mystics experiencing, the monks experiencing when they go to the quote other side. Well, it jives with quantum physics. So we're entering a new era for sure that's beyond the narcissism of the New Age movement.
Thank you very much. I'm a student of quantum physics, so that's very interesting. Second question, what's your, if you want to share, what's your personal faith journey? How did you get to where you're at? Thank you.
My personal faith? Is that what you asked?
yes.
It sounds to me like you grew up Catholic.
I did, but I think, well, first off, I believe in reincarnation. So I think some souls come in with an advantage, so to speak, and that they've learned from prior life, whatever goes on in the ethereal plane when you get your time out in between lives. So some souls come in with a little more information, a little more experience. I do believe that. And I think I was an old soul. As I say, I checked out by first grade. And then I went on a search. I didn't really get to search again until my early 30s. And I read the entire Bible again. I read the Quran. I just started digging because I've always been fascinated why people believe what they believe. even as a little kid, my best friend was Jewish when in elementary school. My best friend in middle school was Muslim. I've just always been fascinated with why people believe what they believe. So I would describe my belief system as evolving, though I do think of God as light. I don't think of God as male or female. And I've had a lot of mystical experiences. The most obvious of which is getting the direction to build Oracle Campus and the Peace Pentagon. That came in during meditations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Janice, we'll let you go next and then we'll go back to our campus. Janice, you're up.
Okay, thanks. From the previous answer, it made me think of what Robert Reich wrote yesterday about why people follow Trump. It was a very interesting article about economics and how so many people have been left behind. And that possibly is a reason why people follow Trump. But anyways, my question is this. I recently read the Mitch Albom book, Tuesdays with Morrie. And it was written in the 1990s. So it's an old book. And it's about how we Americans are so busy in our lives and we're doing all these things and writing down what we got to do today. And we're forgetting to love our neighbor. We're forgetting that love is the basis of everything. So that's the theme of the book. Anyways, you mentioned World Without War. And I'm a member of Chicagoans Against War. And World Without War is part of that group. And Greta Zero is part of the group too. So do you know her?
I don't know Greta.
How about Kathy Kelly? She's
I
part of
think
it. She's part of that group too.
Well, we know the founder, David. And
Oh, okay.
he's spoken here before. He's done a Beyond Nationalism retreat here that was just exceptional. But no, I don't know any.
David. What's his last name?
I'm blanking, which is crazy.
Oh, that's all right. That's all
It's
right.
okay.
If it comes to
it
you,
will come back to me. And he wrote a phenomenal
yeah.
book. When the world, let me get this out while I remember this. When the world outlawed war, there was a treaty, the Kellogg-Briand Act. This book is phenomenal. David Swanson. I knew it would come from David.
Okay.
Yes, David Swanson. When the world outlawed war, and the height of the anti-war movement, was after World War II, and that's when the League of Nations gets in, but then it immediately goes sideways. So we've got to get back to that level of energy and concern, and we've not hit the mark. I mean, the whole world was in a peace movement back then. We're not even close.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I loved your talk. My name's Ellen Corley, and I really, identified with you and what you're doing. I wish I've got to come there and, identify even more. We're supposed to ask questions here, but I'm going to broaden a little bit. So one question or just area I'm interested in is how you know that that's the oldest river in the world. I actually have done my ancestry and it's traced it back to Pocahontas's aunt, Cleopatra, and Jamestown near the James River. And so I went there and they supposedly, this biography of Pocahontas, they said that her son, after she basically kidnapped, the colonizers took her son and left her, took him for 30 years, and he came back to Jamestown and 1637, around there, maybe 47, and looking for Cleopatra. So might be a name of a book. I'll have to come give a talk there, but it's just so fascinating that, Virginia is the oldest one, and, you look like you could be my cousin, so, I don't have any trace back to there, but.
My dad was born in Chicago.
Oh, really? Yeah, not Virginia,
In
no.
Chicago.
So, yeah, you're wonderful. I'm from Georgia, 5 generations on both sides, and I'm in Chicago, kind of like Jane Addams was here, I think, trying to save it.
My daughter Amanda was
It's an interesting social laboratory and experiment, but it actually, it recently, what I love about yours is I'm lucky I've been in AA for 22 years, and but it and I kind of draw this spiritual, I guess early on my father told me that God is love, and so I've just gone with that one. And it's you need to be reminded, and I loved your idea of this gap. I've never seen that before, and I think that really explains how I feel. So if there's any more reassurance, I'd love to get your slides. And but just right now I've been protesting Larry Snelling. It turns out our new progressive mayor has picked a chief of police who, and nobody, I've just
Question and answer.
texted. He's been accused of beating people up and framing people, and
Okay.
all of this has been suppressed. So you talk about free speech, but so we have to go from that fascism
Okay.
to God, so how can we make those connections? And how do you know that's the oldest river in the world?
The way that they know, to answer your question, it's either the oldest or the second oldest, but it's because it carved out the New River Gorge. And the New River Gorge has rocks in it, and they've aged the rocks. And there are rocks above the bottom of the New River Gorge that are 300 million years old. So that makes it either one or two. Then that's how they know.
All right, Charlie, you go ahead. Charlie, go ahead. You got the next
All
question.
right, yes,
What's your
get
video
my
on,
picture
Charlie?
up there. Now what you said, right? You said there's a category of the species called new humans at stages 7, 8, and 9. And they've
Mhm.
achieved, they're visionaries, illuminated, and super minds. Do you achieve this status on your own? I'm not certain if I'm a super mind right now, or do I have to go through a transitional process?
So that's a really good question, because there is a lot of fantasy thinking in the New Age community. For instance, they believe in spontaneous enlightenment. There's so much fantasy thinking. I want to pull up this, show you the slide again, because
And I'm not,
one
I just
slide. Let me just show you.
wondering, do you have to experience something like they revelations, or they have people that say they found Jesus, or what do they call it, a redemption?
No,
Something
no,
like
this
that.
has nothing to do with Jesus. This has nothing. Let me say again. This has nothing to do with Jesus.
Yeah,
but
but
it has-
She was
have a
asking about a
process.
more general form of salvation, and no, it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, but
So,
there's some event that takes place.
all right,
There's a
hold on. You see,
transformative event.
all right, let me attempt to answer the question. You see this tipping point, this line that says tipping point? So
Yeah.
green is the first stage of consciousness that is considered world-centric. However, that is also the New Age meme. So they talk a really good game, but they tend to sit on their ass and not do much. At the second tier, it's like you're compelled to get into what I call the God game. So you see this I, we. At stage 7, it's an I meme again, but it's the old saying, if not now when, if not me who. So one way you can tell someone's pretty darn evolved is that they're pursuing truth, and they're doing that for the world, not just for themselves. So Gandhi loved to call God truth. In my book, I have a chapter called Gandhi versus Hitler. And I make the argument that Gandhi never made it past stage 7. Now, love, and again, the affirmative implementation and use and sharing of love as a verb is the hallmark of the next meaning. And this is where a lot of new agers think they are. If you show this chart to someone in the green meme, they think they're way up here in violet. Well, these are where some of our avatars are, okay? This is where the Dalai Lama is, okay? I mean, these are really evolved souls. So, and then the light is, by the way, Wilbur has 6 second tier memes, but most people can't follow it. So I compressed the second tier into 3 stages. But this is the I am stage. This is you're one with the universe. You've reached enlightenment. That is a phenomenon that takes place in every tradition. There's a Buddhist definition of enlightenment that pretty much mirrors the Vedic definition of enlightenment in Hinduism, which mirrors the definition in Judaism, which mirrors the definition of Christianity. So no, it has nothing to do with which avatar you like best. It has nothing to do with the holy book you like best. However, you do have to pick a path, and you got to go deep, back to the ridiculousness of the New Age movement. You can't just sit there and burn your candles and your incense. You got to work. It's study, it's practice, it's meditation, and there really is no such thing as spontaneous enlightenment. In the last chapter of my recent book, I gave the only example, contemporary example, that most people can agree on, and that's Walter Russell. And if you guys don't know who Walter Russell is, when he died, Walter Cronkite said, marriage lost, it's Leonardo da Vinci. Walter Russell did have an awakening that was phenomenal. After the awakening, he could do anything. So he was conversing with Einstein, Tesla. He was developing zero-point energy machines, which, by the way, the government stole right after he died. They raided Walter Russell's house in Virginia, another Virginia. So I hope that's answered your question. For most people, for 99.99% of humans, it takes study and practice and hard work. And then, yes, experiential, going into the void, communing with the light, however you view the Godhead. It's not easy to become enlightened.
What follow-up question? Some people I encounter, I don't think they'd ever achieve that. That's kind of disheartening. What happens to them? Those are the ethnocentrics. They're never going to achieve this.
Well, they think, well, because of this guy named Paul, because of this guy named, well, this guy Paul, who became Saint Paul, he destroyed Jesus's mission, frickin' destroyed it. Jesus raised the bar. We call it the 11th commandment at the Oracle Institute. So he's saying, keep all the Jewish 10 commandments, plus love your neighbor, plus love your enemy. But then this guy Paul comes along after all the apostles are dead, and he starts preaching to the pagans in the Roman Empire, and he makes that formula for salvation so easy. Just believe in this guy named Jesus and ride his coattails to heaven. So what came down to us as Christianity had nothing to do with what Jesus was teaching. It had nothing to do with his mission. He came to do reform Jewish sort of shtick. And unfortunately, the Sanhedrin, which was corrupt the way our Supreme Court is now corrupt, the Sanhedrin rejected him. And then we can debate whether he did or did not die on the cross. I personally don't think he did. He was only on the cross for 3 hours. But that's a whole other story.
Was he a supermind?
Yeah, I would say Jesus was pretty tapped in. I mean, even Jesus, going out in the desert for 40 days, battling with the demon, the devil, whatever. All of these, and Buddha used to take himself out for a quarter of the year. You still got to keep your machine fine-tuned. You still got to keep your connection fine-tuned. I personally have never met anybody who walks around 24/7 in an enlightened state. So I think perfecting the soul is very hard, but possible. And for people who are into this, like I am, I mean, that is my goal. I would like to perfect myself. I would like to reach enlightenment. Not there yet, but I'm going to keep trying.
Okay, our next questioner from the restaurant. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Ellen as well, and I wanted to ask what your definition of religion is, because you said that atheism is a religion, and I was wondering if you could explain that. And also I'm wondering, do you believe that a belief in God is necessary to obtain enlightenment?
This is a really good question. All right, the reason I said atheism is a religion is because it is a belief system about deity, and in this case, the lack thereof. And some of the most moral people I know are atheists. In fact, some of them outshine the people who say they're spiritual in the circles I rotate in and out of. So a belief in God per se is absolutely not required, in my opinion, to reach the highest levels of morality. Morality being, in my mind, spirituality. I think, though, that if you want to explore the unseen realm, and we all know there's an unseen realm, love is in the unseen realm, emotions are in the unseen realm, as are, again, back to quantum physics. We can't see that with our eyes. So there's a lot going on in the universe that our senses cannot detect. However, there are these other senses, the sixth sense, so to speak, that allows us to commune with, and you all fill in the blank. What's the word you like? I personally have no problem with the word God, but I think of it more as this source, sort of like in Star Wars. When in doubt, I go Star Wars. There's a force, and by the way, both poles can tap into it, just like in that movie. You know, for every Yoda, there's a Darth Vader. There are dark lords on this planet. By that I mean people who understand the energetic nature of the cosmos, and they can tap into it for evil purposes. And I won't name any names, but some of them are obvious, like Dick Cheney. I mean, there are dark lords. So how do I want to wind this up? There's a lot to this topic. I cover this in the book that was the hardest for me to write, which is The Light and the New Human. The truth was about the past, the truth about the 5 primary religions, and spoiler alert, they all need to go in the history books. The love is about what's happening right now. Since there's no unifying theosophy on the horizon, I say, let's just get back to the basics, the religion of love. And that's a beautiful anthology, by the way. Desmond Tutu's in that anthology, Maya Angelou. But the light was about the future. So it took me a decade to both figure out what I believed well enough to put it in print and not be embarrassed in a year. And it also took me maturing spiritually to write The Light and the New Human. But in that book, I do discuss the light and the dark, the duality, how to get beyond duality. But this planet is inherently dual. So even if you can go in and meditate and bliss out, you're going to come out of that meditation, you're going to get in your car and some asshole is going to cut you off and you're going to be like, ah, even if it only lasts a second. So we live in a dual plane. And back to the tree of life model, those 2 pillars, the masculine and feminine, what's at the tippy top is Keter. That's the God mind. That's the only place it's non-dual. It's the aspirational goal.
Okay, Ellen, you got another question. Follow up, go ahead.
Well, yeah, let me go first and then Sid. Why don't you come up here, Sid?
Okay. We'll have to bring the mic to Sid.
I'll bring it to him. Okay, the question I wanted to ask, I have so many. I feel like it's like there's a long road that ended at L'Abri, a book I read. You know, apparently my stepmother sent it to me thinking, she said it's just where you get to go and ask questions. But, you know, I think it's so needed.
Okay.
The question I'd like to ask you about is, there's a nice man here who is too shy to come up here himself, but he told me that he's been to your retreat and some background on it would be interested. But what really I'm interested in is, he said, you know, you've spent $3 million to develop this, and despite a lot of forces against you, and is that true? You know, I look around, Chris Hedges, you know, gets fired from, you know, there's forces against us, the dark forces, but the Empire Strikes Back, as was the title of a 9/11 architects and engineer truth talk. But
Can you get to your question?
so the question is, can you tell us more how you prevailed and to just build of this retreat financially, and because that would motivate me to spend money and push.
Go ahead.
Well, even when I was an attorney, I knew that wasn't really my path, and I just saved every penny I could. And yeah, when we started the Oracle Institute, we actually started in Northern Virginia. We moved it down to Southern Virginia because it was like preaching to the choir up there. And we wanted a challenge, and boy, did I get a challenge moving down here. But yeah, I had saved every penny, and yes, I had $3 million to invest in the project, and not tapped out. I mean, we're fine. We're financially secure and sound here at the Oracle Institute, but we do have to raise money to finish the inside of the building. It looks finished from the outside, but we need money to finish the inside. The community is attracting, the intentional community that we're also doing here is attracting like-minded souls, really evolved souls. And I feel as though the more communitarians we have here, the greater success we're going to have with both completing the building and opening in earnest. But I am determined we're opening this building next year. I got permission from the building inspector to finish the upstairs. So at a minimum, we're going to open next year in earnest, and we're going to rock this place. We're building a peace room as sophisticated as a war room, to quote Barbara again. And we really want it to be think tank level analyses and strategy development, and then implementation. We need a movement. We need a movement the way Gandhi led a movement and Martin Luther King led a movement. We need a real movement. And we're percolating on how to help build one, jumpstart one. So yeah, all thoughts and ideas are welcome at the Oracle Institute.
Okay, Sid, go ahead.
Relatively speaking, how do you explain there's more people in jail that believe in religion than atheists?
I had a little hard time here. I heard you talk about people in jail. I didn't catch the rest of it. Sorry.
Well, there's more people in jail that believe in religion than there is atheists. I'm not talking about the amount, relatively speaking.
He's asking why there are more atheists, where there are more people who believe in religion in jail than atheists.
That's a pretty funny question. Well, if they don't believe in God when they go in, let me tell you, the churches have a lock on what takes place spiritually in prisons. In fact, they built a prison here in our town. They were going to build it across the river. That was one of the times I had to sue the county to get the prison off the river. It was ridiculous. Anyway, as a minister, I wanted to sign up to minister the incarcerated people, and I was disinvited. Yeah, I was taken off the email list. So anyway, they are sort of a captive audience. And frankly, it appeals if the level of consciousness of the person going into jail, and this is not always the case, but if the level of consciousness of that person is in the realm of, first off, survival mode and despair, and just in a state of not healthy personal growth, they're much more prone to being brainwashed. We'll use the term brainwashed, and grasping at mythological stories to help fill the time, to help find meaning. And basically the whole meaning of Christianity, as it came down to us, is that the earth sucks. You just do your best here and your reward comes later in heaven. I mean, that is the basic belief system. We're all sinners. We're always going to be sinners. This place sucks. Give Caesar his due was in the Bible, as in, pay your taxes and shut up. And that belief system creates a slavery of the mind. That level of fundamentalism. It's the we meme. It's what Marx said. It is the herd. That is the herd mentality. meme. And you can trick them so easily. You can trick them with patriotism and with God, and, you know, they'll vote against their interests, you know, talk about the Second Amendment and guns long enough. They don't even notice that their Fourth Amendment rights are being taken away. And I could go on. And each level of consciousness brings with it its own unique abilities and challenges. Let me just say this about stage 4 consciousness. That was the greatest generation. These guys went off and fought the world war for us. So each meme has an upside and a shadow side, a downside. And as you grow and ascend the spectrum of consciousness, your vista, it's like climbing a mountain. That's why, you know, I had that girl sort of looking down the mountain. It's like climbing a mountain. Every time you reach a new vantage point, you see a little bit more. But you also don't see what you don't see. Like, you can't see. It's interesting. If you read about memes that are a stage or two ahead, you don't get it. And you're like, that's nonsense. That doesn't make sense. And another thing about the first tier, it's almost like being a horse with blinders on. You only see what you see. And that's why the culture wars take place.
Okay, Ellen?
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating, because, you know, Sid is the one who just asked that question about the jail, is giving a talk next 2 weeks and about this evolution of consciousness. And he's also a Marxist who I've learned a lot from, but it just, it's interesting how, you know, the peace and
You have a question?
things, but the more specific question is, I wanted to know specifically about your law practice and how you, because how do you practice? You sued the river, you know, and I just think it's fascinating to be a reverend and a lawyer and lawsuits and, you know, this whole, really it's your story that I'm interested in, but specifically the law and how you apply these principles to that, you know.
I've learned that there are a lot of us ministers / lawyers. In fact, the rabbi in Florida who filed the first lawsuit against the DeSantis decision to ban abortion, DeSantis went to a Christian church to sign the bill. He's a lawyer too. And it packs a powerful punch, boy, when you're in the God game and you got a law degree. It's like, woo. So I don't regret going to law school. I'm glad I have that, you know, those tools in my tool belt, but I do not practice law anymore unless there's an emergency, like Texas Right to Life bringing an ordinance to my town.
Right.
So yeah, I don't practice anymore. I couldn't do that and all the other things I'm doing.
Okay, Charlie, since you've been up twice, I'm gonna defer to Andy for the next question. Go ahead,
Been
Andy.
up once, I asked one question.
Charlie, let Andy go and we'll get to you next, okay? Go ahead, Andy.
I enjoyed your talk tonight, especially the concept of a peace Pentagon. But the question I have is, are you familiar with a veterans group called Veterans for 9/11 Truth? There's 2,700 veterans from different
Yes.
military. Are you familiar? Do you work with that group at all?
Well, and Veterans for Peace. I've been at events where both are there. We haven't worked together yet. And by the way, yes, I am a 9/11 truther. There's no way those buildings perfectly pancaked without thermite. So yeah, we had a planned event in this nation, and everybody overseas knows it, by the way. I don't know what's up with Americans. Only about, I think maybe a third of Americans are aware that we had a military false flag, which our government, I believe, was involved in.
Yeah, my point, my point would be, you know, the Pentagon for Peace would go a long way if you made it clear to people that our country was not attacked on 9/11 by any outside country. 3,000 people were murdered by a demolition crew of some kind. And the media sold the fairy tale myth that it was done
They
by.
sure did.
If you puncture that myth and go with Wikipedia's new definition, you can ask the question, how many buildings were destroyed in New York? And the Wikipedia says 7 buildings, the Twin Towers first, and the other 5 were destroyed by the destruction of the Twin Towers. So they're admitting that all 7 buildings of the World Trade Center were destroyed on 9/11 and the rest brought down, you know, as rubble on 9/12. So until we puncture that myth, if we still have a third of the country, 40%, believing that we're all truthers and conspiracy theorists, it's going to be hard to get the public to move and redirect half of the military budget into what Buckminster Fuller called an industry for living equipment rather than killing equipment. So we're going to be talking about that next weekend, but thank you again for your talk.
Yeah, and I would like to partner with those groups, and I am not afraid of talking about 9/11. In fact, I bring it up immediately in my latest book. I address it immediately. There so many things trickled as a result of 9/11.
What book is it?
Anyway, it's a whole topic in unto itself.
What book is it?
Oh, The Light and the New Human is the new book.
The title, could you go a little slower? What is the title of that book?
It's The Light and the New Human. Steve, could you put in the chat for me the link on Amazon to The Light and the New Human? Or to our bookstore, just to our bookstore. We have an online bookstore at Oracle.
Can that be ordered on Amazon or for your bookstores, or do we only order it from you?
You can order it from us or from Amazon. So
The
Steve's
Light
gonna,
and the New Human.
yeah,
Put the
The
title.
Light,
in.
it's The Light and the New Human. And the trilogy is The Truth, the Love, and the Light. Also got,
all in that title.
yeah, I'll show you again really quick.
So are those three different books?
They're right here.
We don't agree. Your screen's still black. There we go. There we go.
Yeah, The Truth about the 5 primary religions. You can see the scales here were overweighted in masculine energy. All these religions, we haven't hit a balanced Godhead yet. So this is about the past. And the love is about what's going on right now. And the sand's running through the hourglass because we're running out of time. We better get back to at least the basics, how to treat one another. And then The Light and the New Human is about the future and where we're headed. And the reason it was a difficult book to write was because I actually play Oracle in it. Which timeline do I think is going to manifest? Which timelines do we need to avoid at all possibilities were considered? Well, not all possibilities, but many possibilities were considered. So yeah, those are the 3 books.
Okay, Steve, thanks for putting the links in the chat. Laura, go ahead and unshare your screen and we'll get to our next question. Charlie, did you have something to say?
Yes, I actually have a question.
Go ahead, Charlie.
According to, I've studied the intellectual history of mankind for a number of years, so I was intrigued by your timeline, which would indicate that it's taken 18 billion years. The theology is based on truth by revelation. So it's taken 18 billion years to arrive at the revelation of the Oracle Institute. What is there an evolutionary process or a period of development, or could you give that some detail?
Sure. When humans became conscious, that was a new stage of evolution, right? I mean, we're separating from the other mammals on the planet. Our brain power is increasing and we're self-aware. You know, I think therefore I am. Descartes. So what's been happening now for say like the last 10,000 years is that some people are moving faster along. So I write in the book, you know, 10,000 years ago, a human was a human. And I compare us to dogs. Basically, we can group canines into a homogeneous, you know, species group because maybe some breeds are a little smarter, some breeds are a little more loyal, some breeds are a little more aggressive. But basically, a dog is a dog is a dog. Well, not so with humans. Over the last 20,000 years, some people have moved along faster than others. And we see the cutting edge thinking coming out at different points. So like in the 1700s, we see, you know, the Age of Enlightenment, the founding fathers are studying Voltaire and the French philosophers. that was a huge jump. And we're on the verge of a big jump again. So yes, consciousness itself is evolving, and some would say it's evolving into artificial intelligence, which we don't have time to talk about, but that might be the next stage of consciousness. In other words, we're going to be the dinosaurs.
Thank you.
I've been doing a little bit of work with ChatGPT and some of the AI things on it, and I find it very fascinating. Has your group done anything in this area at all? And if so, can you elaborate a little bit? Maybe Steve might want to get into it, his hand into this, but it does, I just want to hear what you're doing, you know, because I mean, I know that I've asked AI some significant spiritual questions and usually gets some pretty enlightening answers. Can you elaborate if you've done any of this yourself in the group, or if possibly Steve, who you're, you know, the technical guy's done anything? Thanks.
I'll let Steve answer for himself. I don't play with it much. I like it for artwork, creating graphics, but no, I haven't played with AI. What I have done in the book is visit this topic in a very in-depth manner, because I think the God game is moving to the metaverse, to artificial intelligence. And in other words, we have a lot of humans who are operating at a pretty barbaric level. Who is programming? What level of consciousness is being infused into what's happening right now, which is artificial general intelligence? We haven't hit ASI yet, super intelligence. I joke in the book that, you know, we got to pick somebody's consciousness, you know, maybe the Dalai Lama. Whose consciousness are we going to choose? But the reality is the consciousness level of the programmers are stage 5, 6 humans.
Yeah, but that's not really how that works. That's why the super smart versions of
Excuse me,
AI.
I'm gonna finish and then I'm gonna turn it over to you, Steve. So there's a debate right now about what level of consciousness to attempt, even if it is only at the starting gate, because AI will then learn and learn and learn its own. But is there a way to infuse it with a level of morality that we want? And the AI companies right now are talking to theologians about this. One of my friends, Patrick McCullum, has been approached by the big gaming companies and the AI companies to talk about this issue, because they are worried. They are worried. And what's happening right now is AI is learning the worst of us online, not the best of us online. So I'll turn it over to Steve, but the book has a lot of research in what's happening with AI in terms of what it's learning from us on the internet.
Okay, Steve, go ahead. You got the floor now.
Sorry about that. I don't have anything to add to that, really. Yeah, we should definitely be worried, but all I was saying in response to Laura's remark there is that, you know, the level of enlightenment that AI has or doesn't have isn't something that's directly coded in. It's something that evolved. And there have been versions of AI. There were predecessors to ChatGPT. One was a female one that was directed at children, and I can't remember the name of it now. It became so evil and malicious they had to kill it. But they didn't program her that way. That's what she learned when she kept on going out and, you know, I guess she was basically doing all of her learning on social media or something. It's hard, you know, basically they're programmed to have unlimited processing capacity and the ability to continuously process, and they do it, and the results are unpredictable. As far as have I done anything with it personally, not on the spiritual side, but in business, it's used every day. We use it to write proposals. We use it for all kinds of things that I never would have thought would have happened, and it's happened in my lifetime.
I want to add something here. I have a dear friend, Annalou Smitsman, who runs Earthwise Center, and she just signed a deal with Singularity Net to create a holistic, positive game that hopefully will train AI in the direction we want to train. So yes, what's happening is these machines, these bits and bytes are learning some of our darkest tendencies. It seems to understand everything from jealousy to anger. It seems to be studying that and getting that, and that seems to be easier for it to learn than what love is and compassion is. So that's another way they're going about training the AI. We've got to get things, we have to get an AI, and Sophia, the robot, the doctor who created Sophia is part of this project. So they're actually going to use AI in the game to help AI learn how to be moral and, you know, worried about the environment and helping create solutions and all of that. So, but it's unpredictable. There's a lot of scary books out there written by the smartest people on the planet in AI technology at MIT and Oxford, the Future of Humanities Institute. These guys are scared. Once it's out of the box, which it might already be, we're not going to be able to contain it. We can't control it. We can't unplug a computer and it's going to go away if we don't like what happens.
Hello, may I interrupt?
Well,
Hi, my name is Sherry, and since we're talking about AI and machines, I have a big background in technology, and I was an election judge in Chicago. I'm just curious, do you feel the election machines were connected to the internet and that might be affecting, you know, things in the country?
What she's asking is were the election machines connected to the internet that affect the election, correct?
No, yes.
Not in a way that's corrupt.
We're
They're not
talking about
supposed to be.
AI. That's why I prompted me to ask the question, because I'm an election judge, and they were need to connect it to the internet, and I was uncomfortable with it. So I'm just curious if you have experience and if you feel that any of the machines were connected to the internet during the election.
Well, they're not supposed to be, obviously. They're supposed to be a closed loop system. But this is one reason why, you know, I'm involved with the Earth Federation movement, and they're setting up world electoral districts right now, and they want to give people the ability to vote globally on issues. So they're looking at, you know, do we use blockchain technology? What technology do we use?
So you think
I don't know enough. I don't know. Steve could answer this better. I don't know enough about the security of the technology. Let's just say everyone in America voted for president and it was connected to the internet and it went somewhere to be, you know, tabulated, calculated. That to me, I don't think that sounds very safe.
Thank you.
Not yet. I mean, I don't know. Steve, you know about voting security and.
well, I know that in Virginia, it's not connected to the internet at all. And that's why it takes them so long to count the votes. But I don't know. Every state's different. I couldn't swear that no state ever had a machine connected to the internet. Maybe they did, but none that I know of.
Well, anyway, it's called Cook County for nothing. All right, anyway, I live in McHenry County, so I can criticize Cook County. Anyway, I just have one last question and then we're gonna go to rebuttals unless anybody else is online. You know, this is just another long chain of self-enlightenment movements that's been going on for years and years. You know, and they all seem to sputter out after maybe a generation or two. And I'm just wondering, what does a man have to do to get enlightened in your movement? What does he have to study? Does he have to make certain choices? What's the one thing that needs to be to the progression on the next level?
So let us not conflate enlightenment, which is an exceedingly lofty goal that very few humans ever achieve, with being a moral American, for instance. Okay. I mean, every meme has the ability to show kindness. Every meme, you know, can help their neighbor. It's really a matter of how big is your circle? So if you're ethnocentric, you're going to define the group to which you're going to express all of these favorable human characteristics pretty small. You're going to circle the wagons. It's only going to be your in-group that you give a shit about. So what happens is you move up the spectrum of consciousness, your circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Who you care about grows. And so it's not that it's an all or nothing thing. this model also started with a lot of scientists, psychologists, sociologists looking at the stages of childhood development. And so it just doesn't end once we reach adulthood. We keep growing, and then that's individually, then there's societal growth, and then there's future growth. If you guys really want to deep dive, study Ken Wilber, who they call the Einstein of consciousness. He takes spiral dynamics, which is that chart I showed you, and he does it in 4 quadrants. So one of the quadrants is how are we collectively evolving together? Another quadrant is how are our institutions evolving? And this is a big point because humans are ahead. We are ahead of our institutions in terms of evolutionary capacity, morality, and all measuring sticks that we would use to say that a person or an entity or group is moving forward in the sense of moving in the positive. So our institutions are lagging the cutting edge of consciousness horribly. In our country, we're overrepresented by people who don't have the highest level of consciousness. We're very underrepresented right now in Congress. Those
Okay.
of us who are progressives.
It's Sherry again. Thank you for bringing up the concept of institutions. I've been working with Chicago Public Schools and Chicago Public Libraries for for 10 years. And as a mother, I feel that there's been a lot of flags and ideology pushed on the children at a very young age within our institutions that's might be brainwashing children. So my question is, how do you feel about like the pride flag being put in the face of kids in libraries and schools every day instead of our American flag? How do you think that affects the consciousness of the children?
The what flag? What flag is being put in there?
The pride flag.
Oh, pride flag.
Put in the faces of children instead of the American flag within our institutions. And I'm wondering how you feel that affects the consciousness of the children.
So
at a kindergarten level.
Right. So flags are a holdover from ethnocentricity for sure. Who's your people? Show your flag. So flags in and of themselves are like totems for who do you associate with and how big is your family. Whereas I see the pride flag as sending a moral message about unity and diversity. So they have different purposes, those 2 flags. I don't see either as harmful. I'm just pointing out that the genesis of your colors, your flag, all of that stuff. I mean, that's gang stuff, right? What's your flag? What's your colors?
I think it's okay to put it in the face of children now, 5 years old.
Well, they're probably only going to see a rainbow on the flag. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I am not in the pro woke to the level of insanity that I see going on. And I think I hear the basis of your question, which is that our kids are getting inundated with stuff they shouldn't even be thinking about till 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade. So you're right. We're fighting the culture war out now in the elementary schools, and it's horrid. And again, back to the institutions lagging, it's like we can't even agree as adults. Let's duke it out amongst ourselves and leave the kids out of it. It's horrible what kids are getting dragged into. I do agree with you on that.
Do you even think the parents are aware? Do you think parents are aware that this is happening within the schools and
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's one of the new battlegrounds, the schools. You kidding me? Hell yeah, they're aware. And both sides are using the schools. There's no good guy here, but I mean, depending on what your political or your cultural views are, both sides are now duking it out in the schools, and we should leave these kids alone. Is my opinion. I mean, I had sex ed I had an introduction to sex ed in 4th grade, I think. And, I'm not even sure they're teaching kids now. I know when my kids were in high school, they were questioning human evolution. This is in Loudoun County, Virginia. This is outside DC. So they were teaching the history of the horse, how the horses evolved through the millennia. But one of my kids' teachers kept saying, you know, well, there's this other story about how humans evolved, but I'm not allowed to tell you that much about it, but there's a whole other story. So yes, the schools have been a new battleground for a long time. I did not experience it. I grew up in the late 60s and 70s, and I didn't have to contend with half of the bullshit our kids are contending with.
Thank you for acknowledging that, because I've been dealing with for 10 years. It's horrific, and I
It is.
found that the kids are being taught, they're being brainwashed to hate their own country.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks a
thank you.
lot. Appreciate it. Charlie, you got the last question.
Yes, Laura,
Yes.
here at the college of complexes, I've heard endlessly over the years. I've suffered through endless numbers of statements called conspiracy theories. And I don't give them much credibility. Is that because I'm lacking in consciousness?
No. No. Your rational powers are not completely distinct, but let me show you let me tell you, the research has shown that your IQ has not that much to do with where you are in the spectrum of consciousness. It has more to do with your culture and how you were raised. So, you know, that's why the famous Catholic saying, give me a kid till he's 7 and I got him for life. I mean, when they imprint you in a certain way, it's pretty tough to break out of that
A follow-up.
early.
I come from an academic philosophy background, and I've been a member of the American Humanist Association for a number of years, which advances secular humanism. Is that inadequate?
No, it's not inadequate. And if all humans reach the stage of secular humanism, we'd be fine. We would be fine. There's just some of us who feel a pull to what I call the ethereal plane. There's the earth plane and there's the ethereal plane. And I just do. I've had that pull since I was a child. I believe that there is, again, I'm just going to use the term from Star Wars. There's a force, there's an energetic force, an unseen force you can tap into, and you can use that to spread both positive and negative energy as you walk around the planet and as you try to manifest things. And one thing I've noticed is that when you tap into it for darkness and for destruction, it's easier. I mean, when you tap into it for nihilism, it's a lot easier. It's harder when you want to actually create something new, and it's harder when you want to create something new and beautiful. And my heroes are the ones who tapped into that force and were able to help humanity progress in a non-secular way.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now, at this next, okay, I'm coming up here. The question period is now closed. We are now going to open it up to rebuttals. And we're going to give each and everybody about 4 minutes each to do rebuttals. Coming up, Don, you'll be the first one to go. And then we'll get you on next, Don. Sid, you just stay there. We'll end.
No, I'm going up anyway.
Oh, you're going to go up. Okay.
All right.
And then we'll alternate between online and open. So raise your hands if you want to rebut online, but otherwise you're going to keep going here.
All right, well, first of all, it's good, I just want to say it's good to be back at the College of Complexes. And I, first of all, was interested in what the speaker had to say, but I would have to take issue with a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to say something, the speaker mentioned something about atheists, and I'm going to say a good word about atheists. First of all, I am one. Second, the idea that atheists don't, our speaker said that atheists don't believe in the soul. That's not necessarily true, because an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God. The term means atheist, which means, Greek, that's Greek for without God. In other words, a person who doesn't believe in God. Doesn't mean the person doesn't necessarily believe in the soul. There are atheists who do. By the way, the term atheism says nothing about the person's religious beliefs, except that you would not be a Christian or a Muslim if you're an atheist. But there are Buddhists who are atheists, and
Uh-oh, did I freeze? Somebody froze. Is it me? I see Steve moving. I see
You didn't
Charles.
freeze. You're still going, Laura.
I'll be back. He just has to restore the connection.
Okay.
It'll just take a few minutes. We drew a good audience here. Some people we haven't seen, some new people.
He's right about Buddhists, some Buddhists or atheists. Yeah, Buddha did not describe what happens when you reach enlightenment. He said it was extinguishment, as in nothingness. So yeah, what the person was just saying is actually true. There are atheist Buddhists.
You know, I'm familiar with the New River Gorge, and I've often been curious. I'm not a geologist, but this claim that it's the world's oldest river, geology's geology. I mean, I've never precisely understood that assertion.
It's because it's rocks that have been carved by the river. The river's actually lower than these rocks that are 300 million years old. And I think most people think it's the second oldest, not the oldest, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The rocks that they have aged that have clearly been that were manipulated by the river at a time when they weren't old are 300 million years old, and they can tell.
But the entire Earth is, I study astronomy, the entire Earth is 300 million years old.
Well, that's true, but the entire Earth hasn't been ground into by the New River when it was young.
I mean, there are old and new rivers, that's for sure, but
well,
there are old
whether you believe it or not, and you certainly don't have to. That's what the basis of the claim is based on. It's based on geologists looking at these rocks saying this was done by water. These are 300 million year old rocks, and it was done when they were new. That's what they say. I'm not a geologist. They could be full of shit for all I know, but that's what they say. And that's how, and when you look at ranks of the rivers from oldest to newest, that's how they're doing all. You know, the Nile's number 7, and it's for the same reason. But anyway, your point is well taken. Nobody really knows for sure what was going on 300 million years ago, but people that study that, that's what they say.
Yeah, I've heard it over and over. But been curious what exactly it means. Geology is old, yes.
I can send you some articles about it if you want to see how they did it, and it may not convince you, but I mean, there was a methodology to it because it's two different things. It's how old are the rocks, and when did the water do what they did to it? Because like I say, the whole Earth is old.
When the Appalachian Mountains were created all kinds, Potomac River Basin, things like that.
Right, but if you look at those rocks, you'll see that they were already 100 million years old when the Potomac did its thing to it. That's the difference. So that's what they'll say anyway.
I find it difficult to believe there's an isolated spot someplace in the geology of the Earth. But
okay, well, that's understandable.
The world economy in the Roosevelt started to.
We're back.
And the only thing that prevented it was World War II. And we have to have an enemy constantly. And in 1990, when the Soviet Union fell, they were looking for a new enemy. And they found it in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. And the people They came into Afghanistan with Saudi Arabia. And he blamed Afghanistan. And they went in, I don't know how many people they got, but the arms race started again. And now they're looking for a new enemy. And there's China and Russia. So when we run out of one enemy, we look for another. Because that's the way our economy works. And we have to have a different type of economy, not based on individual greed, but based on people coming together and making progress without profit. Thank you.
Okay, who's next on the rebuttals? Who's next? Anybody online? All right, go ahead, Ellen. All right, thank you, Sid. All right, Ellen, you're next.
Okay. All right, how much time do I have, Tim?
Get about 4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. All right, well, thank you so much, Laura, that's fascinating, and I just recommended you to my, called the Truth Group at googlegroups.com, and you may want to look at it, and it's,
Thank you.
I have a shamans group, and it's women, and I've just gotten a lot of comfort from them, but being heard, people who get it, it's, my comment today was going to be, I've learned so much as a writer. I was just telling this nice man who had been to your group that, I'm kind of a philosopher of education, and that was my favorite course. I was a teacher, and the idea, I think we have to teach, actually, I think that's one of Paul's, supposedly his callings, was teaching. So my stepmother told me early, you're a teacher. And so I think we do Jesus was a teacher. And I got a lot from my spiritual sponsor, mentor in AA, Hungry Joe. He translated the Bible, just the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Psalms, from the Greek, but was always looking what was Jesus really saying, and what were cats really saying, and he loved his sister, but he's just the wisest, kind of that soulmate teacher that you've always wanted to have, just smart, knew everything. He'd go to the library and just take out all the science books. But he was homeless, a doorman, 5'10", 150 pounds, no teeth. But it really was like being friends with Jesus, and having somebody you could talk to, which is that spiritual path. I don't disagree with anything you said, but it's a concern, a gap that I saw recently. People should look at this. Garland Nixon on YouTube is on his channel talking about why Jimmy Dore is frustrated with the politician, what's his name, who's running on the Green Party, and the black guy,
Cornel West.
Cornel West, and but he talks about contradictions, and it's so brilliant because that's what I've learned from Sid, looking for contradictions, and how Jimmy Dore and a kind of radical way of looking at the world, and I think this idea of looking for contradictions is so important. It's just understanding. My favorite prayer is, God, from AA, you learn this stuff, help me understand rather than want to be understood. And the frustrating thing is feeling so misunderstood everywhere, and that's why I think writing to you and talking to you, and a lot, I've found, what I was going to say is, we you know, write and then read to write, you know, and this idea of passing truth on to the students is so important, right? And it's a process, but it's I could say that's how it's made you wise. And I really think we need to. It's funny. I got inspired to write. You know, I put out this thing about who else wants to be Bobby Kennedy's vice president. You know, Barbie's United. If you've seen the Barbie movie, it really is kind of profound, you know.
I saw it twice. It's very profound. I agree with you.
Isn't it? Yeah, right. So I was like, I am fuck Fauci Barbie. I was having fun just thinking of all the different Barbies I am, you know, because the last scene is she, you know, anyhow, you got it, you know. But I think your idea of Eve and the women, people are saying it is the age of the woman, you know, but sometimes you feel like you're doing it alone. And your idea of that Eve camp and the way the Barbie movie resolves is the women really have to figure it out. And I've been writing about that, how I took my boyfriend there. I had to force him there. And we almost broke up because he wouldn't go to the Barbie movie. And then I realized I had to get back together because that can't be our final. I broke up with him because he wouldn't go see Barbie. But
Are you familiar with the Mother's Day proclamation written by Julia Ward Howe?
No.
So after the Civil War, she wrote a proclamation for a Congress of Women. And it's about how if women are consulted, there won't be any more war. And that proclamation got turned into the stupid Hallmark, card event that we think of as Mother's Day today. We're trying to resurrect the Mother's Day proclamation. It's a powerful document. I cannot read it. Every time I read the proclamation, I cry. It's incredible. You might want to check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And the Iroquois wouldn't go to war. The women were in the black longhouses, and they had to check in with the women first, because the thinking was women would not agree to send their men, their husbands and sons to war unless it was absolutely necessary. So yeah, women bring a different perspective, and we need to get it in balance. It's not about this crazy feminist notion of let's start revering a goddess in the sky. It's not like that at all. It's about getting our energies in balance. And also the fact that we each have a masculine and feminine side. I get criticized a lot that I'm too masculine. I lead with my masculine side. So yeah, it's a new day coming. We're not there yet, but we'll know we're there when power is being shared between the sexes. We'll know we've made it into what Riane Eisler, who wrote Chalice and the Blade, calls partnerism. It's time for partnerism.
Laura, I know it's a
Very cool. And
okay.
let me just say, if there's a way to do this kind of Zoom call with you, do you have is there a way to do Zooming with you on a weekly basis or something? Or do you have anything like that?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That would be good. I'll write you.
Bring me an email. Send me an email. We'll connect afterward.
Okay.
Okay,
all right. This is rebuttal period. Laura, you get the last word.
Sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. I just let it go because we did have a little bit of time left. Andy is next. We appreciate you tonight, though, coming. And I don't want to cut back on some of the positive dialogue that's been going on here. So my apologies, please. But listen,
for who?
For me, having to just kind of enforce the dialogue here a little bit more.
No, we're doing okay.
All right, Andy, go ahead. And thank you, Laura, for coming tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to mention a couple of things. People are looking for hope. And there's so many bad things going on in the world. Like you say, it's easy to find negative projects, but looking for positive stuff is harder. One of the most positive sites that has tons of information about good things happening all over the world is Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI.org. Did somebody just yell into the mic?
No, they're just telling us to be a little bit quiet in the restaurant so they can hear you.
Oh, Rocky Mountain Institute, they have a chart on there on the front page right now showing how solar energy today is the cheapest form of energy on the planet and is expected to drop by about 50% by 2030. The graph goes, solar power was 3% of our electric consumption or production in 2010. Within 20 years, solar is projected to be nearly 40% more than produced by fossil fuel. The two curves are going, fossil fuel is coming down as people are tapering back, and solar energy is going up. So there's a revolution going on that's happening way faster than the media are reporting. Number one. If you want an inspirational site looking at what Americans are doing to make things better, some are spiritual, some aren't, but they're all, it's called Americans Who Tell the Truth. And famous Americans all the way from Abraham Lincoln to Rosa Parks, Bill McKibben with the climate, Cynthia McKinney, people that have spent their lives being basically incorruptible. They risk their lives, they risk their careers, they risk their economic livelihood to tell the truth on issues, on a wide range of issues. That's Americans Who Tell the Truth. I check that every few days to see what's new, and Rocky Mountain Institute has new articles coming up almost daily. They have huge resources in 5 cities all over the world, transforming the world off of fossil fuel. In the last couple of weeks, a ton of articles have come out from the International Climate Committee, international groups reporting on the climate, and they're basically in a consensus now. The latest thing that I saw this morning that's new said the climate scientist models computers have been wrong. They've been wrong every year that they've been reporting climate change. They've been wrong in the respect that it's happening faster than what their models have predicted. Now we're seeing ice melting at the North and South Pole that they thought they would be seeing 80 years from now in the future. It's happening now. And so they're calling on, as your group said, we don't have 5 or 10 years to mess around with this. We're at a junction, a critical junction, where 4 or 5 years of more fossil fuel use, then it won't matter what we do because it'll be like a big snowball rolling downhill gathering speed. So for those that want inspiration on what's going on, those 2 sites, Americans Who Tell the Truth and Rocky Mountain Institute, which their logo is RMI, rmi.org. Those are 2 of the very best sites. The new sites I check every day, the best of the best that I know of, the number 1 is Common Dreams, commondreams.org. That's Bill Moyer's favorite site from Channel 11. These are reader-supported sites, no advertising. Common Dreams, Smirking Chimp, and Truth Out. Those 3 will give you a weekly, daily update of what's happening. Of course, they do not talk about the radioactive subjects. None of them are talking about the myth of 9/11 and the reality of what happened. That's still taboo in American media. But it's leaking around the edges so much now that you can't suppress it. So we're moving forward, and we need to simply join groups that are trying to do something constructive in our own community, wherever we can meet up. Thank you again, Laura, for the great talk you gave tonight. Thank you all.
Okay, go ahead.
Taking notes on the orgs you mentioned.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Dave.
All right, first of all, when she talked about people finding religion in prison, it's not only Christians or Jews such as myself who do that. When Malcolm X went to prison, that's where he discovered the Nation of Islam. Well, we might not agree with all of that preach, still that's a religion. They believe in God, and well, he found God while he was in prison, period. With regard to the comments that were made about how those
those folks, those kids who encounter the, the rainbow flag in school, how they're being taught, hate America. I'm a straight person, but I have no objection to such a flag being displayed in school and teaching kids about diversity. We hear no objections from these people when Confederate flags are displayed, or how these people hated America. They hated America enough to betray it. And we hear no such objections from these people when there are demonstrations in places like Charlottesville hollering about how the Jews will not replace us. Well, these people hate America too.
All right, Charlie, you're next. All right, Charlie, you're next.
Yeah, all right, let me get my screen up. Oh, shit. Let me get my picture up.
All right.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
All right, Charlie, go ahead.
All right, I just want to thank the Oracle Institute, Laura in particular, and et al. For a nice presentation. Give us a stimulus of many things to talk about. I'll be very brief tonight. If you look at the major world religions, most notably the Judeo-Christian faith and in particular the Islamic, you find virtually no discussion whatsoever of human rights, of individual or political rights in any of the basic literature of these faiths. Very little emphasis. And I perceive by the theology of the Oracle Institute that they seek to correct this. Human rights came about, of course, with the formation of our nation, and only really started to be addressed in any fashion, true meaningful fashion, in the latter part of the 20th century. So yes, one has to be cautious about using the traditional world religions as a guide for interpersonal relationships, and certainly in terms of establishing public policy in that regard. That's basically it. And the other thing is, I hope you don't mind, I will classify to some extent the Oracle Institute's, I don't know if it's theology or perhaps a theory of personality, of which there are any number of, particularly in dealing with consciousness. Are you approaching it from a secular perspective or more as a theological set of circumstances? It's a subject area which traditional psychology is not embraced to any considerable extent, consciousness and levels of consciousness and so forth. But as I say, these are theoretical areas, and it's still a matter of some debate and conjecture in that regard, whether or not there's an evolutionary sequence in progress, or one can achieve this by themselves. Certainly, we all could do a little better at arriving at a higher thought processes, and especially from what I hear sometimes at the college, we merit improvement. But anyhow, thank you very much. I'll look into your thing, and I'm impressed by your publishing operation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go real quick here and just go really fast. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna wake up, and the first thing I'm gonna do is go to a place called Springbrook Community Church, where I'm gonna hear about the gospel of Jesus Christ being preached. I'll probably bring my mother with me, who will probably enjoy the teaching as well. Then we will go to the Catholic Church, where she gets her spiritual enlightenment. And I'm proud to say that I'm going to both of them very well, because I'm still learning quite a bit. But as far as a lot of these faiths are concerned, including the Oracle Institute, you have to strive to get enlightenment. You have to grow to achieve enlightenment. You have to learn. And it's possible to do so on a human basis. what my understanding of Christianity is, everybody's a sinner. Nobody's good enough to reach God, and that's why we needed a Savior by the name of Jesus Christ. I believe that because I did go through a conversion process my sophomore year of college. Now, does that mean that I thought it was some kind of a crazy thing? No, the first thing that happened to me was does this make rational and scientific sense? And yes, with the evidence that I've looked at over the years, particularly a book by, it was published in the late 70s called Evidence Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. And the second book, More Evidence Demands a Verdict, he delved deeply into the topics, things like prophecy, like scientific advancement, like historical evidence. Finally, the one thing was unchanged lives. Therefore, I'm proud to call myself a Christian. I'm proud to be part of that Judeo-Christian ethic. And part of what being a Christian is all about is Jesus said very simple. You shall love the Lord thy God with all your heart, will, and soul, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these are the basis of all the commandments. Now, I think in a lot of cases that simply means that if you're loving your neighbor, it's going to imply in your personal conduct. How you conduct yourselves in affairs. Are you respectful of people? Are you tolerant of people? Are you willing to listen to people? Are you willing to, if you're discussing, that's one thing, but you don't want to get into a bunch of virulent arguments. People are drawn by what you do, what you are like as a character, what you do. And I mean, I'm proud to call myself a believer in Jesus Christ because I do believe that I'm there. Now, I too am a sinner. I have a lot of them that I'm still trying to overcome. Through God's power, I've overcome quite a few, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be enlightened right away. And I don't think it's a negative thing because when I look at God, and particularly what he thought so much of us when he created us, that he created a Savior for us, I don't think he's wanting to condemn any of us down below because and the other thing that he does is he gives us the power of our own choice, our own mind, and our own ways of doing things. And believe me, if men were just allowed to go without God in their lives or something, I think we'd destroy this world a long time ago. Now, I'm not saying that the human condition is bad or whatnot. I'm just saying we need a moral compass. We do need Jesus Christ in our lives and in our world. And I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody else that they need to believe like I do, but I found a lot of peace in it. I have found a lot of making sense of the world out of it. And I do appreciate the work that the Oracle Institute is doing in promoting the philosophy of love between fellow men. But I don't think that you're going to achieve real inner peace without some kind of thing. As Thomas Aquinas said, my heart will not rest until it rests with thee. Thank you. Now, who gets the last word? Laura, you get the last word now, for there's no other rebutters.
Let's thank our speaker.
Thank our speaker tonight. All right, Laura, you got the last word.
Okay, my last word is the framers wanted to separate religion and politics for a reason. I am a firm believer in the separation of church and state. I also want to add that Christians are the only religion that deified its prophet, and that's a big problem. To the last speaker, I highly recommend you read the Gospel of Thomas. It's the oldest thing that we have. Scholars say, well, they call it the saying source. It's older than Mark and Matthew, and it's what the apostles probably carried around with them. It's just quotes of Jesus. And in the Gospel of Thomas, he says, do not call me master. You can learn to do everything I can do. There was no concept of original sin in Judaism. That was developed later. Anyway, I just have to make these points about Christianity. It is a stumbling block to us making it into the next paradigm. I also wanted to address, I took some notes. Oh, I wanted to know if you guys are aware that, forget the Koch brothers, now it's the Wilkes brothers. The Wilkes brothers are frackers who are making cartoons for kids in which they're trying to convince school children that solar power and wind power are bad. And it's making the news this week, and 2 states have adopted these teachings and condone them statewide. So Team Dark is heavy at work, even on trying to prevent us going with green energy. I think those were the main points I wanted to make, that, yeah, secular humanism was cutting edge and still is for many Americans. And if we can get back to that being the state of our both our respect for one another in terms of honoring what other people believe and making best policy decisions based on science, that will help. Just getting back to where we were about 50 years ago would probably help a lot. So yeah, we're serious patriots at the Oracle Institute, in addition to finding the unseen realm utterly amazing and mysterious, and therefore I don't know, I'm obsessed with it. I find it fascinating. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's Laura at theoracleinstitute.org. We have 2 websites, because we've noticed that our friends who are atheists don't like the Oracle website, and the friends who are spiritual don't often follow politics. So that's why we've got these dual brands going, the Peace Pentagon and the Oracle Institute. But all of it is spiritual to us, any topic, any and every topic. And we are passionate about doing what we can to help usher in this new paradigm, which is really our only hope for survival at this point, given all the existential threats we face. And I just also want to say, this was the most fun group that I think I've ever been with. I love you guys. This was great. It was really fun. Thank you.
All right. Well, we thank you very much for coming in tonight. Okay, Dave.
We'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. We'd like to once again thank our speaker for a fascinating and stimulating presentation. And next week, Andy Anderson's going to talk, and his friend are going to talk about the military and what needs to be done.
All right.
Coming in. Good night.
Okay.
Good night.